Craigslist is a website for classified advertisements with various sections dedicated to jobs, housing, items for sale or wanted, services, community events, gigs, resumes, and discussion forums. What sounds like a great service is sometimes marred by creeps and criminals. Here are a few scary Craigslist stories that will make you lose sleep. I have been receiving strange emails from an individual who posted a personal ad on Craigslist's Casual Encounters section. The emails are sent to an anonymous relay address created by Craigslist for every ad, which then forwards them to my actual address. After conducting some research, I discovered that this creepy person is someone I briefly met when he responded to a Craigslist ad I placed 6 years ago when I was selling a house. This deranged person saved the anonymous relay email address from my long-expired ad and, 6 years later, decided to use it to email me. He is now sending me emails that appear as if I responded to his "Any ladies up and horny" ad. To add to this bizarre story, I have another ex-boyfriend who is constantly stalking me and breaking into my email, Facebook, and other accounts. He is now questioning me about this Craigslist guy and why I'm replying to his sex ads. It's unfortunate that being a woman means dealing with creeps like these who come out of nowhere to harass. I barely remember this guy's name, but he is obsessing over me 6 years later. It's insane. I urgently needed a new roommate and ended up selecting a girl from Florida who was relocating to San Diego. Initially, she sounded a little odd and clueless over the phone, but in person, she was downright bizarre. She had no concept of personal boundaries, would consume all my food, use my laptop in my room to access plentyoffish.com when I was away, and would barge into my room and say the weirdest things when I had friends over. And this was all in the first week. Over the month she stayed with me, she did and said many strange things. She began hanging out with a coworker from Subway and her coworker's recently released from jail boyfriend and 4 of his buddies. They mainly came around because she would buy stuff and they would laugh at her foolish behavior and words. She would always leave the window cracked because she frequently misplaced her keys and talked about doing that all the time. So, her friends broke into the house and stole my TV, laptop, the smaller TV from my room, a wedding dress from my aunt, numerous DVDs, and my prescription glasses. When she returned home, she accused me of calling the cops on her because her broken laptop was stolen. She even suggested that I took all my things out of the apartment to steal her worthless broken laptop. When the cops arrived, they pulled me aside and told me that she seemed unstable and suggested that I avoid using Craigslist for roommates in the future. Another thing that happened when the cops walked in is that I had this woman cornered and was shouting at her with my finger in her face. I thought I was doomed when they saw that, but after conversing with her for 5 minutes, they seemed to comprehend my frustration with her. The police only recorded what was stolen. I took away her key and placed her 1 box of things outside the apartment. I ultimately retrieved my belongings on my own by concocting some nonsense about having hidden cameras and stating that I wouldn't show them to the police unless I got all my stuff back. Like a miracle, that tactic worked. My mother and stepdad are ranchers who recently put their old work truck up for sale. A lady from a rural area about 4 hours away expressed interest, but claimed she couldn't drive even halfway to get the truck. Despite my mother's suspicions, my stepdad convinced her to follow in a second vehicle so he could drive the truck to the buyer. When they arrived, the woman presented a post-dated check and begged my stepdad to leave the plates in his name, giving a convoluted story about bank problems. My mother immediately became suspicious and argued with my stepdad about taking the check and leaving the plates. In the end, she lost the argument about the check, but won on canceling the plates. The check bounced on the date it was written. The woman dodged phone calls for a while before finally answering and providing another convoluted story about being in the hospital. My stepdad stood his ground and told her they'd be taking back the truck. They then drove another 4 hours with a flatbed in case parts were missing. No one answered the door at the property, but they found the truck in a shed. They loaded it up. As my stepdad secured the load, my mother slipped a note under the door saying, "Thanks for nothing. Hope you enjoyed screwing us around." 15 minutes later, the woman called and threatened to charge them with harassment, but my mother reminded her that she would have to explain her own attempted fraud to the RCMP. The woman hung up, and they never heard from her again. When I was new to the big city, I decided to sell my Honda Accord because I thought I wouldn't need it anymore. After a few phone calls, a man named James, who appeared normal and well-dressed, came to see the car. He was in his early 40s and was buying the car for his college-age daughter. Although I'm always cautious when dealing with strangers, James seemed friendly and sincere. He test drove the car with me in it and did a thorough inspection before negotiating the price for a while. Eventually, we agreed on a 2-day hold before he could come back to pick up the car with a cashier's check. 2 days later, we met again in a normal neighborhood in the urban city. We test drove the car again, and James gave me the cashier's check. However, I insisted that we go to the bank together to cash the check and get the title notarized over to him. At this point, James started acting nervous. We pulled over to the side of the street to discuss it. James was in the driver's seat and I was in the passenger's. Even though I felt comfortable around him, I was still insistent on doing the transaction at the bank. James asked me to do one more inspection of the car with him. I agreed. As we both got out of the car, he jumped back in and drove away, leaving me behind. I tried to run after him, but he was too fast. I asked someone to call 911. An undercover police car with 2 officers pulled out of an alley 5 feet away from me. I waved them down and explained what had happened. They told me to hop in the back of their car. We tried to chase the guy but couldn't catch him. Eventually, the officers dropped me off at the police station where I filed a report and an insurance claim. Sometime later, James sold the car to somebody else who actually had a daughter in college in need of a vehicle. When the daughter tried to register the car at the DMV, it was discovered that the car had been reported as stolen. As a result, the police arranged a meeting at the station between myself, James, and this guy. Although this guy denied any involvement with James, he agreed to refund the money James paid him if he could leave without any issues. We all agreed to this, and James and I decided that his daughter could keep the car, and I would accept the refunded money from the dad. In the end, I did receive payment for my car, but the entire experience was incredibly stressful and unpleasant. Despite this, I continued to buy and sell cars on Craigslist without learning any real lesson from the ordeal, aside from the practice of taking a photo of the driver's license of those I interact with.